apologies, do not make an apology. I'm going to start. So, when I was first asked if I would do a CFF talk, my first reaction was, no way. I am not getting up there because, first of all, I've got nothing unique that anyone else in this room couldn't say. And if I do have anything unique or different, are they going to steal it? So I'm not going to put that out there. And then I went through that thought process of, room full of peers. Do I really want to show up in a room full of peers? Is that safe? Can I really do that? So I'm hoping this is my hook. Can anyone relate to that? Okay. So now maybe you can relate to that, maybe you can't. Maybe you're sitting here thinking, oh gosh, she's going to waste my time. Maybe you're thinking that you're sizing me up in some way, or maybe you're even not even thinking about anything about related to me because your mind's somewhere else. That's the little voice in your head, right? So what is your little voice saying right now? That's what mine was going through. And then I pushed through that and I made a shift and I'm like, all right, come on, Kim, you push yourself, so let's do this. We got this. Let's go. Then I show up here. Oh, and then in walks Michael Block, and then I get the whole story starts again, right? Oh my God, Michael Block's story, Jasmine's story. I'm having these amazing conversations with people who are like so rich in their stories. I'm not qualified to stand up here. What am I doing up here? There goes that little voice again, right? That starts kicking in. So that little voice, we all have it. You have it going on, I have it going on. Meet Jack. Jack is my little voice. Jack is an acronym for characteristics in me that I don't find so lovely. It stands for judgment, acceptance, and control. Like 3 things that really keep me from showing up with people. And so now, in the shadow, I call him my inner critic, but in the shadow work world, Jack is supposed to be my risk manager, right? Like he's that guy who is always there. He's supposed to be protecting me and keeping me safe and making sure I don't get hurt or do anything stupid, right? Like that's who Jack is. But he's still a nemesis to me. He really is. So plow through Jack again, and I'm in this conversation, and I'm having, this whole week I've been having these really soulful, heartfelt conversations with people. And I'm thinking, I can't get up here, right? I can't get, and I was talking to a couple of my friends, and I'm like, how can I get up here and impress? And how can I get up here and show up? I'm like, you can't. If you want to impress, impress. If you want to show up, show up. Right, got it, show up. Okay, so what does show up mean? I love Brene Brown's quote around this, very simple. Works for me. Showing up is the courage to let ourselves be seen. Showing up is our courage to let ourselves be seen. So that can mean anything to anyone. To me, what that means is I'm showing up in my true values, in my essence, in who I am as a person. So for me, that means starting with knowing what my values are, which is pretty easy, and I'm sure a lot of you do this too, because being a personal growth junkie, well, I've done that exercise a few times, so I know what my values are. Him showing up is about well-being, it's about connection, it's about courage, it's about trust, and it's about fun. So when I show up, that's what you get. That's me showing up in my true essence. Now, I think I've got that pretty good in my personal space. I do show up in my real life that way, and probably too much so. My professional life, maybe not so much. Although, well, actually, I guess it does show up personally. Just a quick sidebar, it was funny when I'd been talking to Ellen a lot before we had gotten here and had so many conversations about this and so many other things. And I walk up and introduce her, and I'm like, Ellen, I'm Kim. And she looks at me and she goes, Kim, I expected you to be this big. I'm like, no, it's just little old me, 5 foot nothing right here. This is all you get. But that's me, I guess, showing up to her in that way. But back to the professional place. So I grew up more in the coaching space first. And the first message we get in coaching is you don't overlay your story on anyone else's. Everyone's story is unique. And so the last thing they want to hear is, oh, I had a similar experience. I can relate to that. I had the same thing happen to me. You don't. Showing up as a coach means showing up for that person in their world. So when I'm present and showing up for my clients in the coaching world, it's me showing up in their world. My clients think they know me so well. They think they really understand who I am and everything, but it's not. They don't. They don't know anything about me. But what they do know is that I show up for them. Then come into the YPO space as a facilitator, a whole different ballgame, right? So here it's, You got to go into the cave together. You got to be able to model the behavior you want to see. You got to show up vulnerable. You got to go show your emotions. You got to go into this curious space with people. You got to show up in a very different way. So that was, I could do that. I can play in that arena, but it was definitely something that tripped me up for a while when I was entering in and out of both of those spaces. So where do I land? I land wherever my clients need me, right? Like if you need me to be in coaching mode, I'm going to be in coaching mode. If I need to be a facilitator, if I need to be a presenter, not my favorite space, by the way. But that's where I figured out where I have to show up. So I had to figure out for me, because I was kind of in this stuck place a couple years ago, of where is it that I need to really do some work around this? Because I wasn't feeling like I was doing well in my work, but I just felt like something was missing. So in the LA conference 2 years ago, we had that same exercise that we do here where you pick a secret facilitator and they send you a message. Well, I was fortunate to have Terry Plockman as my secret facilitator, and he left me a quote at the end of the retreat that was right on mark. It was what I needed to hear at that place in my life. Oh, that wasn't it. Oh, is it missing? I guess it's missing. All right, I'm going to tell you what it is. It is Viktor Frankl's quote. You know where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is your power to choose your response. And in your response is your growth and your freedom. That was a watershed moment for me. It wasn't earth-shattering, but it was what I needed to hear in that moment. And so for me, that really moved me to a place of, great, that's my next move. And somehow my slides got messed up here, so I got to go back a second and see what happened. Hang on. All right. So this is like later that I'm supposed to be saying something about this, so that's really cool. There it is. There's the quote. Okay. So for me, that was the next piece of work, which sounded pretty good and pretty easy. I can do that, right? Because here I show up as, that ESFP with that spontaneous temperament, who's an 8 Enneagram, who is a high DI, low SC, who also has that shadow archetype of being a warrior energy, who also has that PI quotient of being a real controller, and then also a high affection person with a lot of need for achievement, and also a pluralist in the development space. So I got this, I can do this, right? Just read a couple manuals, read a couple books, and then that's when I could go back to that place around the, all I have to do is just show up authentically and do, just show up in that way, right? That's easy. So the self-help books and all of that stuff, that could work real well and be helpful, and that can give you all that name and culture that I said there. But then came the next piece for me, which is really who am I and how am I showing up? So tell me if you can relate to this one. That's me. Tasmanian devil. That's how I live my life. I'm spinning. I'm going round, really fast, getting things done. Everything's happening, making the world move and everything. Then I stop. And I look around. And I get my markers. And then I do my job. And I facilitate. And I do pretty well at it. And then I spin again, and I go, right? How many of you live your life like that? Do any of you facilitate like that? Right? We come in, we get grounded, we center, we calm, leave the blackberry and the crackberry and all that stuff behind. And then we show up. Right? Well, that worked for me pretty well. But then I found that it only got me so far. It only moved the ball so far. I wasn't feeling complete. I wasn't feeling like I was really the best on my game. And I was still missing something. And the missing something was the incongruence that I had created in myself by living this and then the pause. So I had to drop in a little bit more. And I had to get in touch with, who am I underneath this really? How do I create that space between the notes? How do I intercept that nanosecond of the stimulus and response and find out what's going on in that space? So for me, I went through my own process, and one of my best playbooks in that was Dean Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Is anyone familiar with that book? Right, the fast twitch and slow twitch. So here's my really bastardized version of neuroscience, and he talks about how you have your hippocampus and your amygdala, and you get hijacked, and we spend in our first twitch, and our first space is where our survival mode is. And then in order to find, that's your stimulus, that space to get to response, and the slow twitch is where you need to find that space and how to really find yourself, how to settle down. So for me, that meant creating some serious muscle confusion, because you saw how I was living. So I started my regiment, and actually I always had this, and these were things that I had to do to create my own muscle confusion. And so in every sense of how I would show up, I'd have to create these forced pauses for myself until they became more natural. So that was my journey, and then, this has always been my journey, but I really need to put it back into play. And for me, it has really worked, and I want to share a story with you. And for those of you, I've had a great opportunity to connect with a lot of you over the past couple of days and shared what happened to me this summer and some really difficult stuff that I had to move through. This saved me. This really got me through that. But I want to share a story with you related to us in the facilitator world that I'm hoping you can all relate to as well. So about a year ago, I get tapped by a forum to do their retreat, and it's, tell me if you've heard this story before. They're WPOers, they've been together 17 years, they've done it all, they've seen it all. What do you got? Oh, here comes Jack, right? So, well, I like people, I think I'm a good facilitator, I don't know what my unique offering is, but I'm pretty good at what I do, I think. Oh, and by the way, Kim, we've had all of those rock star, superstar facilitators, the ones that were on Jim Warner's A-list and Old Guard's list in LA, remember them? We had all of them before you, so come on down. Okay, no Jack Flair there. So, as I was preparing for that retreat, I put more preparation into it, and more time, and more energy, and more effort. And the more I put into it, the less authentic I felt, and the more stressed I got, and the more freaked out I got. And I'm calling my friends, and they're talking me off ledges. And so like today, too, right? Like, quit the TED Talk, why are you doing this? And then it was that moment of reconciliation with myself of, okay, you got this. You got to trust that all that work is paying off. Show up. So I punted about 80% of what I was going to do, like I did today. And I went with my bag of tricks and my contingency plans and just hoped for the best when I showed up. So I get there, way far away from any civilization that I know, and probably the only common denominator I have with these men is that we're all Americans and we all breathe. That's about it. So we sit down to breakfast, don't really know them yet, and the host asks us to grab hands and says a prayer before breakfast to honor their Savior. Jack wakes up. Just stay calm, Kim, it's cool. Do you know the military term DEFCON, like it's a defense readiness condition? Condition? Defense condition. So 1 is peacetime, and 5 is peacetime, and 1 is like nuclear. So Jack's about a 4 right now because he's awake, and it's like just look around, just follow their lead. So I do, and then conversation starts, and it's a little bit of social and political stuff. And Jack's now at a 3, so I keep your mouth shut, stay quiet, don't you say a word, just listen. So we're staying quiet, and then the conversation swings to college and kids. I'm like, okay, I can play. So Kim, where's your daughter applying to college? Tulane, Syracuse, Wisconsin, Indiana, Maryland. Jack's on high alert, looking around the room, and I apologize for those of you who don't understand what this may mean. I'll clarify that in a second. And so then the question's like, well, that's pretty random. Why is she applying to those schools? And I just am like, oh, big spirit, I don't have variety. Jack is doing everything in his power to not go down, right? He's like keeping me, stay afloat, don't say a word, just hang in there, Kim. I'm fully aware that my body is like in total reaction mode. And it's a feeling I've had before, it's a feeling I've had thousands of times before, but I wasn't aware of it like I was in this moment because of that work I'd been doing. So then we move into the retreat, and I play my vulnerability card up front because I got to make that connection, and I start with, I got to admit to a little bit of performance anxiety here. The expectations were set pretty high, you guys, so, and I know you can smell fear, right? I know it, I see your skepticism, so I played that card a little bit, and it leveled the mood a little bit, and we calmed down. And then when we were into a little bit further in, and a little bit of issues clearing, and a conversation around what do we need to have to say to be able to come present in the room. So I said, I gotta come clean. I had a really strong reaction at breakfast. And I'm having a really hard time trying to articulate this right now, but I'm going in. Jack, back me up. Cover me, dude. We're going in. So, here's the deal. There's nothing random about where my daughter is applying to college. Wow. We're Jewish. She's Jewish. It's not something I say out loud. I have 51 years of ancestral fear. My parents have it. My grandparents have it. Their grandparents. Whole history of that ancestral fear. I've never said out loud in a group like this, obviously, news to me, and to them, the admittance of being Jewish and holding that space for myself. And in that moment when I was sharing that with them, I realized what was going on in my body, and so did they. And what I noticed about it, it's the shame, it's the fear of being stereotyped, it's the aggression, the microaggression that I never really personally felt, at least I didn't think I did. My brother did. He got teased for having a Jew fro. My family did. We had a swastika painted on our house, but we had all these Jewish neighbors, so why? It was just vandalism. It wasn't anything. It wasn't me. I got teased a little bit here and there. It was there, and I didn't know it. And I felt it every single time I was in that position, but never like I did in that moment. So what happened from there was magical. You know how the story goes, right? It creates the revolutionary space that just you wait and see. They're waiting to see what happens next. They created it from there. I can just step back and let it happen. So I share that with you in two things that I'm going to ask of you as Jack and I leave here and beat myself up for all the things I screwed up while I was standing up here. The two things I want to leave you with in that is, what's your Jack? What is your inner critic or risk manager, and or both? What is it for you? And then my request and my invitation is to please share it. I would love to hear it. I would love for you to show up with me. I would love for you to be seen. Thank you.